and welcome to this special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Stuart Childs speaks to Joe Kelleher about the practicalities of converting to organic dairy farming.
Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to this week's Let's Talk Dairy. So as I said to you last week, this week I'm joined by Joe Kelleher. So Joe and I were colleagues when I used to work in the Limerick unit, and as I was just saying to Joe, people often say that people are saying that since he became organic specialist that he's gone over to the other side, basically having been a conventional dairy advisor in Newcastle West for many years. But Joe is very good on numbers and very good at business planning and so forth. So I was just saying to him there that anyone that said anything to me about him becoming the specialist for organics, I said to them that if anyone's going to make organics work, it'll be Joe Kelleher. Will make it work for dairy farmers because of his ability to combine good advisory skills that he has with knowledge in terms of business planning and so forth as well. So he'll be able to make it pay basically for people. So I asked Joe to come on today because look, there's obviously with Pippa Hackett in government, there's been a push towards organics and there's a bit more interest in it maybe in the last number of years as well. And Joe is going to be in a good position, I suppose, to talk about it from a numbers point of view, and we'll say that there's an increase in the demand for organic product as well now from the dairy side, and that there's markets for it. So we're going to have a conversation today. There's no presentation associated with the webinar today, so I'll encourage you to put in questions as we go along. But Joe, I might just start by asking you, like, what kind of a demand is there for dairy, we'll say organic dairy, and is it a domestic demand, or is there actually can we export some of this as well?
Yeah, I suppose it's a bit of both really. So if we kind of look back historically maybe at the organic market in Ireland, it has traditionally been the liquid milk market that has dominated it, and that has kind of formed the main processors. So you have 4 processors in the country, the likes of Teagasc, Carabon, Arrivo and the Village Dairy in Carlow, who are focused a lot on the liquid side of the market, the liquid milk, and because of that then they want a 12-month supply, which tends to lead to an autumn calving system. But in later years, there's been a shift in that market really towards similar to conventional dairy, in that it's going more to the products and the commodity market. So there's a big demand now for, in particular, yogurt and cheese are the 2 big areas at the moment where we're seeing the demand. So Teagasc would have a grass-fed yogurt there. It's a very strong seller in the German market in particular, and that's one of their main growth areas. And that's a spring that suits a spring calving system. The other one then is the Little Milk Company, so they convert all their milk into cheese, and their cheese then is typically sold to France, Germany, and America would be their main outlets, and there's huge demand for that product. They would have sold 4 times the quantity this year of that cheese if they had the milk to produce it. So there is a gap in the market there. There is a need for extra suppliers. But even aside from that, like, there's other areas that I don't think we've even touched on in organics. Like, there's no processor doing organic butter if you look at it in the country. Like, and we sent 35,000 tons of conventional butter to the German market alone. And the demand for organic produce in Germany and France alone is massive. Like, if you take the Irish organic market for organic food and drink is worth 190 million. The French and the German markets combined are worth 23 billion. So, 23 million, sorry. So like that's 23 billion, yeah, sorry. So it's more than 100 times the size of the market that we have here domestically. So that's where the action is happening, and there is a lot of incentives being put on in mainland Europe to encourage consumers to consume more organic produce, and there's huge increases in the demand for the European consumer in particular. And their demand in this product. So if we can tap into that market, similar to what we're doing in conventional circles, there's huge opportunities. And the other one then, of course, like is that we haven't touched on either, is the baby food. Like, you can buy a tub of baby food in most supermarkets here in Ireland, organic baby food, and that's French baby powder. For the most part, it's making that baby food. So we're exporting conventional baby powder to China and places like this. But we're importing organic baby powder into Ireland to make organic baby food. So there's huge potential there in the market, I think, especially in the dairy side of things. There's massive opportunities.
Yeah, because that's interesting, Joe. Because I was kind of, one of the other questions that I had for you this morning is like, is it a bit niche? Like, so you know that if a lot of people did, so if you were very successful and you achieve your target in terms of the numbers that you want to get in, does the price for organic produce suddenly drop because we know we have to cut the cloth to try to get it into the markets? But actually, that's kind of quite the opposite stuff from what you're saying there.
It is and it isn't, because like if you take that we're at 2% nationally of land in Ireland is under organic farming, and our target is to get to 7.5% by 2027. So like that's still niche, really, in my eyes, like, because there's still 93% of the land is being farmed conventionally. So it isn't that we're trying to convert everyone in the country. There won't be a market there for that, and there won't be a market there for large. So 7.5% is still a niche market. It just has to be a bigger niche, if you know what I'm saying. And if we look at the dairy side of things, it's even smaller. Like the dairy, we're a third of 1% is what we are at the moment. The 66 organic dairy farmers out of 17,500 in the country are organic. And like in the short term, like if we could get that to 1%, that'd be huge. So like that's 100 extra farmers really you're looking at. So like that's not flooding any market with organic produce, 100 extra farmers. So that'd be a medium term goal really that I would see, that we could try to get 100 farmers extra into organic dairy. And the 7.5%, like the reality is a lot of that is probably because of the nature of the farming systems. A lot of that is going to come from sheep and beef farmers. So dairy, possibly we may not get to 7.5% of dairy farmers in organic, but we'll definitely get higher than where we are at the moment.
Okay, and then I suppose to come down to the nuts and bolts of it, then the actual process of organic, what does a farmer have to be doing in order to be classified as organic? Obviously, we have the conversion phase, and then we get to fully organic. So obviously, concentrating on the dairy side, given the name of the program, what's the move to organics for a dairy farmer, and what are the implications for the conventional farmer that's currently operating as they are operating? What are they going to have to change to become organic?
Yeah. And I think your question is kind of right, because the first thing that you have to do is convert the farmer, and second thing is convert the farm. And to convert the farmer, like as I say, you can convert every farm in the country to organics, but you can't convert every farmer. So it's the mindset is the first thing. If you're the farmer that sees a weed, you look out the kitchen window, and you see a weed outside in the field in front of the house, and your first instinct is, I'm just get the knapsack to spray that weed. But then maybe organics isn't the right choice for you. If you're heavily dependent on chemical fertilizer at the moment, there's going to be huge changes for you to adapt. So on the other side, if you see a weed and it doesn't really bother you, or if you're not very heavily dependent on chemical fertilizer, if you've been sowing lots of clover, bits of multi-species swards, planting trees, doing things like that, you're kind of demonstrating that you're environmentally conscious, and maybe organic is a good fit for you. So it's the mindset first of all that has to change. I suppose one of the big differences I've seen, because like I'm only in this gig 6 months now, and one of the big differences I've seen from the previous role that I had in conventional dairy and to organic is the way you look at a field even, and the way you look at your farm. So like a conventional dairy farmer goes out into a field and he sees that field, the grass has gone a bit yellow or there's something a bit different. The first thing he's going to do is he's going to go for the fertilizer spreader to throw something on it. So you're judging everything by the appearance of the crop. Whereas in organics, you're looking at the soil. So you feed the soil, you look after the soil, and you leave that drive the crop. And what you'll see with farmers that go into organics for the first time is they're going to probably have a tough enough first 12 months, because the farm is completely adjusting. It's used to getting fed from the top. It's used to this chemical nitrogen and P's and K's being thrown out on it, and it's used to the roots are sitting near the surface of the ground waiting for this feed to come to it. So it kind of gets lazy and it doesn't have to go digging for its own resources. Whereas after a year of not being fed, it realizes I have to go look for this myself, and the roots start to go down through the soil profile, and you get increased soil health, you get increased soil biology. Like if you take, for example, an earthworm, we often overlook them, but if an earthworm passes soil through its system, you can actually increase the availability by phosphorus by 7 times by just passing soil through an earthworm. So the easiest way to increase, about 95% of the phosphorus in our soils is locked up So we have huge amounts of phosphorus in all our soils, but 95% is locked up, it's not available to plants. But if we can pass it through an earthworm, we unlock a huge amount of that. So if you can get more earthworms in your soil, you can get more phosphorus in your soil. And some of the studies I've seen, like, and a lot of them would be anecdotal kind of things now from farmers, but like you're talking about a trebling in the number of earthworm counts in a spade full of soil was typically what you would see in organic farms versus non-organic farms. So you're increasing that, you're increasing the biology, you're creating an environment for clover to thrive. And you'll find that growth actually rebounds strong on these farms after 2 or 3 years in organics. So typically, a lot of farmers may have to drop the stocking rate low enough the first year, but they can actually climb back up again as they go on through it. I kind of gone off a bit on a tangent there. What was your
No, you're okay. No, but are there actually learnings in it? In like, can the conventional farms, following on a small bit from what we covered at the dairy conference maybe yesterday in relation to the clover, of which there was a lovely photo of behind you there, like Ger Pardy said yesterday, like, that he had clover on his farm with a good number of years, but hadn't cut back the nitrogen. He went about putting in clover because he was looking for the extra solids that Clan and Moorpark were seeing from those trials. And last year then Jim Miles, who's his local advisor, said to him about cutting back a bit in the nitrogen on those high clover swards that he did have. And he cut back and he found that his clover content actually went up, as well as reducing his nitrogen usage. So like, if conventional farmers were even to take a leaf out of the organic farm book, they could probably, like, they could learn a bit, could they?
Absolutely, yeah. Like the clover is huge on organic farms and has been for the last 30-40 years. You know, the organic farms have been kind of growing clover when maybe it wasn't popular anywhere else. It's the driver behind our system. Like, it's the only place they can get nitrogen. Like, if you look at it very simply, like 79% of the air we breathe in is nitrogen. And if someone told you there was a plant that could magically take that nitrogen out of the atmosphere and turn it into available nitrogen for the plant, you'd say, wouldn't it great? And there is. So like we have a video that we show of a beef farmer above in Sligo. He's a Danny Kilcullen, is his name. Like, and he's one comment on it, and he's kind of, he says, I can't figure out why people are buying all this chemical nitrogen. He said, well, you can get it from the air for free, and it's true to a certain extent. Like if you take James Humphrey's trials below in Salahhead, like James is growing 13.5 ton of dry matter on clover only swards, zero nitrogen. Not clover only, sorry, clover grass, about 50% clover content.
Zero in,
but with zero in, like, and he's carrying a stocking rate of 2.35 on that, which is above what we're allowed in organic, because you can only stock, the max you can stock in organic is 2. You can't go into irrigation in organics. So like there's huge, but I suppose that maybe the other one that's kind of forgotten an awful lot, I think, and is the red clover. Like most organic farmers will have red clover in their system, like, and they're getting anywhere between 13 and 16 ton of dry matter off these red clover swards with zero nitrogen again. So like that to me has huge potential for the conventional dairy farmers. Like I know traditionally it's seen that you put it on the outside block that's down the road and you cut it 3 or 4 times. But I think there's a role for it nearer to home than that. I think we can be putting it on the milking block or anywhere we intend cutting silage and put it into a bit of a rotation. It will die out after 4 or 5 years, and you will have to, well, you may have to replenish it, because it's typically sown with a ryegrass and a white clover mix. So if the red clover dies out, you should be left with a good mix of ryegrass and white clover sward that you just sow. If it's on the grazing block, you convert that back into a grazing field. If you have enough land on the grazing block that you typically do take a bit of silage off the grazing block, it fits in there too, in my eyes. So I think red clover is probably one of the hidden secrets maybe that the organic farmers have that conventional farmers are slowly kind of getting to grips. I know a few now around here locally in Limerick that would be trying it in the last few years, and I think there's going to be more jumping on that ship.
Yeah, and indeed the 2 guys that were on the conference with us yesterday are beginning to go that direction as well for outside blocks as well. So there's 2 questions here, Joe, from the same person. The first one is, how do you go about getting more earthworms?
How do you go about getting more earthworms? Well, you can't buy them in. Well, maybe you can, but I wouldn't go that route, because what you'll find is, like everything, if you create the right environment, they will come. So like chemical nitrogen and herbicides and pesticides has been proven that it's not creating the right environment. It's not creating the environment that they appreciate. Multi-species swards, I know some people love them, some people don't like them, but multi-species swards are fantastic for getting earthworms into paddocks. There's a guy there, Kevin O'Hanlon, below in Wexford. He's an organic farmer since last year. Like Kevin has shown that he's multi-species swards. He's got 23 earthworms per spadeful versus 3 or 4 in conventional paddocks. So they're fantastic for getting the earthworm population in there. It's just that they loosen up the soil, so they're creating the environment. They're deep rooted, so they're creating the environment that the earthworm likes. So yeah, it's just going a bit lighter on the chemicals, the fertilizer and the sprays, and maybe doing something like multi-species. You can't do an awful lot. You can look at the biological amendments, but you're going into a different league altogether if you're going down that route.
Okay, and then the other question is it a bit of a chicken and an egg situation with regard to organics, because there's only a few organic processors, and it's actually a question I had for you as well in terms of location of those processors and where people are to become organic. Maybe is it something that puts people off of looking into it because they feel that there's no one close by to collect the milk. So the question that's come in is if there was more processing it happening locally or more processors at it, would it actually encourage more people to go organic?
It would. There's no doubt in saying that it would. What the organic market ideally needs is one of the major processors to come in and take an interest in that infant formula market. I think there's scope there for 100 or 200 organic farmers to be supplying a dryer somewhere in the country that would be converting that milk into organic baby powder, and there's a market there for that if one of the bigger co-ops did take an interest in that. None of them do seem to be taking an interest at the moment. I know there's a lot of them looking at it, but maybe one of them might make that leap. But going back to the existing processors that's there, like as I said, there is demand there from the likes of Glenisk and the Little Milk Company at the moment. Little Milk Company have suppliers in Cork, Kerry, they have a supplier above in Cavan, they have suppliers in Wexford. They'll go pretty much anywhere to get the milk. They want spring calving herds. Glenisk are pretty much covering the country as well, so they're willing. And the organic co-ops that are there work well with each other, is what I would say. So they'll trade off suppliers with each other. You know, if they won't be passing one another on the road.
Exactly, like the same amount of milk. Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't like. Cork, strangely enough, Cork is actually one of the counties where there isn't an awful lot of organic dairy farmers, believe it or not, even though there's more dairy farmers in Cork than anywhere else. But there is a good bit of interest coming from the likes of West Cork in particular. I'm seeing a lot of my inquiries will be coming out there. But the likes of Little Milk Company would have no issue going to the likes of West Cork to collect milk. Their milk is processed in Mogeely in East Cork, so that wouldn't be a big stretch for them. But as I said, no, the processors there that are covering the 26 counties.
Okay, so Joe, getting into the mechanics of it then, we'll say converting over, and then we might move on to the financial side of it. We'll say, I know you have some figures there that you're kind of maybe to make it all work for people. So we'll go through the conversion piece first.
So the conversion piece is, as I said, the first thing is the farmer has been converted. So we've gone through that. So we're assuming his mind is made up, and then the next thing we need to do is convert the farm. So I suppose before I go into maybe stock and rate and things like that, just the practical things of housing is one of the big items. Housing is actually harder to get right in a beef setting than it is in a dairy setting, because if you have good sized cubicle beds, you will be allowed to continue with them in an organic system. The rule in organics is that 50% of the floor area has to be a solid floor area, but your cubicle bed can't count for part of that 50%. Now, it's meant to be an 8 foot by 4 foot cubicle, but if you're near enough to that, most of the certification bodies will work with you. You may have to put in extra lying area in the house to get that extra bit, and sometimes it might be something like putting 70 cows into an 80 cow cubicle house or something like that to get that. That cubicle has to be bedded then at all times, it has to have a mat and has to be bedded. So typically you're looking at a sawdust and lime kind of mixture, untreated sawdust, cubicle lime mixture to bed that mat. So that's I think that's the bit that there is a conception out there that cows have to be straw bedded, but they don't. You can work with your existing cubicle house if that's what you have. The second thing, I suppose, is the veterinary side of things, maybe is the change in that. And again, there's a kind of a misconception out there that we can't use any antibiotics. But the reality is one of the core principles of organic farming is that the care of the animal comes pretty much at the top of the list. So if an animal is sick and if an animal needs an antibiotic, she gets an antibiotic. It's what happens after that is where the change comes in. So in organics, you would typically have to double or treble the withdrawal period, depending on the product you're using. It typically ends up near enough to a 2-month withdrawal period for a lot of the common antibiotics. Take mastitis, for example. A cow can get 2 courses of antibiotics in a 12-month period. If she goes over the 2 courses, unfortunately, her milk cannot be called organic after that period. So she typically has to pack her bags and go if she gets more than 2 courses of antibiotics. I suppose just on that, typically we don't see major cell count issues in organic farms again, which is something I know that would be a kind of a fear. We had a webinar last night and with 2 farmers on, and we asked them about the challenges, and they both said the fear. The dairy farmer we had on, Coleman, said his fear was that would he be able to grow enough grass, and the tillage farmer we had on, his fear was would the weeds going to take over. And as they both said, they realised that their fears were unfounded after a year or two, that the dairy farmer was growing plenty of grass and the weeds didn't take over the tillage farmer as he had expected. So yeah, that's that. Then maybe just going on to the stocking rate, and maybe my touch on soil fertility and that when you're converting. So the stocking rate is kind of one of the key areas really you have to get right when you're going into organic. So the average organic dairy farmer would be stocked at 1.5 livestock units per hectare, and that can range from 1 up to 2. I think that even though there's only 66 organic dairy farmers out there, there's a kind of perception that there's only one system of organic dairy farming, but in my eyes, there's 66 systems out there, because there's a huge variation in what's going on. So if you take, you have farmers there that would be once a day organic, supplying the likes of the little milk companies, spring calving, like they would be feeding little or no meal. There would be very little inputs coming into gate, full stop. There'd be no fertilizer coming into gate. There'd be no meal coming into gate. So it's very minimal what would be coming into gate. Their output will be low. They might be doing 300, 350 kilos of mixed solids a cow. But their costs are very, very low. So it works out as being a very, very profitable system for them. You compare that then with some of the autumn calving herds who can be feeding 2 to 3 ton of concentrate, a lot of that which could more than likely would be homegrown, and they can be doing north of 7,000 litres of cow of output. So you have huge extremes within the systems within organic. So it's a case of finding the system that suits you, and sometimes the stocking rate kind of goes with that. So the way I would, like, as well as I do, like the trials would say that kind of ryegrass or old permanent pasture getting no nitrogen is going to grow 5 to 6 ton of dry matter, probably somewhere in around that. And if that's what you have, within your stocking rate has to match that, and that's going to be somewhere around 1 livestock unit per hectare. On the other hand, if you can go to the other extreme and you can get 20, 30, 40% clover content into your pastures, if you have a bit of multi-species swards, you can grow somewhere between 10 and 12 ton, and that'll allow you to carry 2 livestock units per hectare. And the reality is that a lot of farmers will be somewhere in the middle. If you have red clover growing on the outside, like what's behind my back here, you can get 13 to 15 ton of dry matter off of that, which allows you to build a bulk of silage for the winter. So it allows you to carry a higher stocking rate again. So stocking rate is the exact same as conventional. It's totally dependent on what you grow and the amount of forage that you can grow on your farm.
That's why, Joe, you would have said it there that some people will probably come back, but then they can go forward once the farm kicks into gear, basically, in the organics regime, like.
Exactly, and it's like you'd often get the question, what should my stocking rate be like? And the answer always is it depends. It's kind of like the lad asking for directions. How do I get to there? And the carryman says, where are you starting from? So it's the same here. Like, it's where are you starting from. If you have a lot of clover on your farm, maybe you don't have to drop back. Your farm might be ready to take off. Yeah. You might be able to sustain a decent stocking rate day one, but if you have very little clover on your farm, you are going to have to drop back that bit. So it is very much dependent on where you're starting from. I just said there to start on soil fertility. Soil fertility is another one that's kind of, again, there's I think a misconception out there with organics in that it thinks that once you go into organic, you forget about soil fertility, but you don't. You just look at it differently. You have to look at getting your nutrients from different sources. So we're getting our nitrogen from the sky. Our phosphorus, we have a couple of options. Dairy sludge, a lot of the co-ops, their dairy sludge would be approved for use on organic farms. So that's a great source of phosphorus on a lot of organic dairy farms. We can use products like ground rock phosphate. They're freely available. Some of them are approved for organic, some of them aren't. You have to just check to make sure there's no chemical process in the manufacturing of these products. They can cost at the moment $700 to $750 a ton, which sounded very dear last year. Maybe it doesn't sound that dear this year. There's K products out there. Now, I suppose with the K, if you are bedding your cows in straw is a fantastic source of K. And organic farmers would use their straw as a source of fertilizer almost. You're bringing K onto your farm with every bale of straw you're bringing in. So it's a great way of getting K onto your farm. And then by bedding your cattle, you're really adding value to that K product. There's also bagged K you can get. You can get products like Kieserite and Calisop and things like that, which are sulfate of phosphate. So muriate of potash is a kind of a severe enough fertilizer on soil biology, whereas sulfate of potash is a much kinder type of potash. So yeah, look, there are sources. So you're still trying to. We're not looking for index 3, I suppose, is the other big difference in organics, because we don't have the big offtakes.
The drive, yeah.
We're not taking off 13 and 14 ton of dry matter per hectare. We're nearer to 9 and 10 ton probably per hectare. So because you don't have the offtakes, you're not stripping as much off, and you shouldn't have to replace as much. So we can typically work away at an index 2 in organic. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the index 1s out of index 1 is typically what you're trying to do in terms of soil fertility. And obviously the cattle story. Oh yeah, that's you can bring in cattle story from your conventional neighbor in organics. You can bring in farm manure from your conventional neighbor. So anything that's an outdoor system, you can bring it in organics. What you can't bring in is you can't bring in intensive systems. So pig slurry, for example, wouldn't be allowed in organics. Poultry manure, you can bring in free range poultry manure. You can't bring in confined, but you've the botulism risk there as well to weigh up. So there's lots of sources of getting our nutrients, and lime, of course, is allowed to be used, and lime is the one thing we have to put out, because that clover, like our pH for grass is 6.3, but our clover is like 6.7 or thereabouts. So we have to get our pH is probably that bit higher in an organic setting than we would in a conventional setting as well.
Okay, and then just I suppose before we go to the financial kind of the case study example that you have there, maybe just the actual cow conversion then as well. You were saying about that there recently to me, that we'll say the process of converting the cows. So the herd of cows that we have currently now, my head is in the right frame of mind. I'm going to become organic. I've been talking to you about my business plan, etc. What's the situation with the conversion process for the actual milk that the cows are supplying?
Yeah, so you take the farmer with his herd of cows outside and he decides to go organic. He can work away with the herd of cows he has. They just come into the organic system. They go through the 2-year conversion period. So for the first 2 years, you're selling your milk to your existing supplier, conventional supplier, and that milk is not considered organic until you've completed your 2-year conversion period. At that stage, that milk then can be sold to one of the organic processors after the 2 years. That cow, that's fine. The cow's milk can become organic, but that cow can never become organic.
Okay.
Now, once 3 months has passed in your conversion period and that cow has a Frisian heifer calf, that Frisian heifer calf is an organic cow. And she herself can be sold into the organic food chain. Now, I suppose in theory she can, but at the moment there's no market there for organic cull cows. So they are sold into the conventional food chain, really is where they end up.
Okay. And so basically, if you decided to convert on the 1st of January, anything born after the end of March, heifer-wise, would be fitting into the system, but the heifers that will be born in 2023 will all be organic heifers at that stage.
Exactly. I suppose one point there just is we would have a few kind of dry stock farmers and that are looking at converting to dairy and like
buying in the stock.
And then, so really for them, the easiest way to do that is ideally buying your stock before you convert, because with 66 dairy farmers in the country, like your outlets to buy stock, either you have to go scrounging a lot from those 66 or you're importing. So really, you would be inclined to say, kind of get the herd in first, or buy in Frisian heifer calves or buy in calf heifers, and then convert afterwards.
Okay, and then just, I suppose, briefly, because I know you need to get finished up there yourself, just kind of roughly the economics around it, the way you've said it to me there before. We'll say obviously fertilizers going out, output's coming down, there's a bit of a balancing act, but you're still able to make it work on a business plan.
Yeah, so like the business plan side of it doesn't need to be too complicated, I think, when it comes to organics. So the first, like when you're working down through your Excel sheet, the first thing is the cow numbers. So you have to see where's your existing stocking rate and where you're pitching your new stocking rate. And typically I would pitch that at 1.5 on the whole farm stocking rate. So you have to see what does that look like in your cow numbers. What does 1.5 livestock units? Sometimes there's a lot of surplus stock, outside of the cows that you can cut them back a bit, and maybe the cow numbers mightn't have to drop. So because of that, your milk sales, your litres of milk going out the gate are going to drop. Your milk per cow, I would rarely drop the milk per cow, because you can still get, I would do my business plan on feeding the same level of meal. So instead of spending €300 a tonne, we'll buy it for €600 a tonne, which is the cost of organic meal. And I only do that purely, I wouldn't be advising anyone to do that, but I just do it purely for the sum of the business plan, just to show that if you feed the same level of meal, like the grass quality in organic farms, like if you go into any organic farms, I think there's a perception out there that it's fields of rushes that these cows are going to be grazing, like, but it's the quality of the grass is often better than what you would see in conventional farms, and purely because of the high clover content that's in there, you've a lot higher quality. So if anything, milk could technically go up because of the level of clover that's in the pastures on organic farms. So I would typically wouldn't drop the output per cow. So you're dropping me sales based on having less cows, not less milk per cow. Then the milk price. So milk price for the kind of the spring calving systems, they've set a base price for next year now, the milk company, of 40 cents a litre, which doesn't sound great at the moment compared to conventional prices. It's probably like I think the conventional price most of them around 38 cents at the moment. But organic prices don't tend to fluctuate much. They tend to stay pretty much level. Like Teagasc have had the same price for the last, I'd say, 10 years. Like, so, whereas your conventional is up and down, and are we at the top of the conventional market? So like if you look at the last 5 years average, like organic prices would have been somewhere in the region of 8 to 9 cents ahead of conventional prices. So you have to take the ups with the downs when it comes to conventional, and there probably isn't as many downs. Teagasc are offering 60 cents for winter milk and just shy of 40 cents for the summer milk, and they're often 50 cents a flat rate then for that zero meal the yogurt, that milk. So I would pitch, if you're going to spring calving system, I would be pitching my milk price at 40 cents plus solids. So if your existing milk price is 5 cents ahead of the co-op base price, your organic price is going to be the same. And if you're doing it for a winter milk situation, all the winter milk guys it's a flat rate price. I would be pitching that somewhere around 50 cents a litre when you're putting that into your figures. And then if we look at the cost side, the only two costs that are really going to change is your meal. So depending on what you feed, your meal is going to change. If you keep the same amount, it'll double because you're paying double the price. But if you drop, you have to just account for that, and you probably have to account for milk output per cow if you're dropping your meal. Fertilizer is going to be, in most cases, it'll be eliminated, but we'd still allow a bit for putting in bits of lime and maybe just to address those low index 1 fields, a bit of ground rock phosphate and something like that. So 2 or 3 grand would cover a lot of the fertilizer bill. And then all the other variable costs will drop in line with cow numbers. So they're variable by nature. So as cow numbers come down, those variable costs come down. Like if you've 80 cows versus 100 cows, your vet bill is going to go down in line with that. Your fixed costs are going to stay fixed because they're fixed by nature. So the land lease is going to stay the same. The machinery running, the insurance, the accountancy bill, they're all going to stay fixed. So if you have 50,000 fixed costs already, you're going to have 50,000 of fixed costs in organics. And then the other key thing is the organic farming payment scheme. So at the moment, farmers get $220 per hectare for the first 2 years in conversion. That's up to max of 60 hectares. So that works out about 13,000 for the farmer with 60 hectares. And they get 170 after that. So that works out about 10,000 after that. And that makes up an awful lot of the gap above the top. And that calculation will vary greatly between farmers. If you're a farmer that's already lowly stocked, and I do that some, I'm going to show that you're better off in organics. If you're up around the 170 kilos organic nitrogen per hectare and we have to bring you back a small bit, I'm probably going to show that you'll make as much money out of organics, but you've less cows to milk. And if you're a derogation farmer and I do it, I'll probably show that you're going to maybe lose, well, you lose marginally in organics, but again, you've a lot less cows. So you might be back 10, 20,000 of profit, but you could also be back 50 cows. So it's a case of weighing one up against the other. I suppose just on that, I didn't touch on that. Like I always kind of put it into 3 brackets of who does organic suit. So the first is the farmer that's already lowly stocked. So stocking rate of 1.5 livestock units per hectare. I do the figures. I don't have to change anything with stock numbers. He's not spreading that much fertilizer anyway. So we just put him into the organic system and you can show a huge improvement in profit. The second category farmer is the farmer that when quotas went, he or she expanded from 80 cows up to 120 cows, but they forgot to build the 40 extra cubicles and slurry storage, maybe didn't keep up the pace with cow numbers. And the parlours may be a bit small, and they're now looking, if I go back to 80 cows, I might have to spend 100 or $250,000 in the yard to bring it up to scratch. Do I go back to 80 cows and would I be better off? And you do the figures on that. And in most cases, yeah, they would go back to 80 cows, go into organics, you would probably be better off. And the third category, which is where I see probably most of the room for where maybe a lot of the new entrants to organic coming from, is the farmer with the 100 cows on 100 acres. And the next thing, 50 acres comes up outside the ditch to rent. And they're saying, do I go to 150 cows on 150 acres? And do I spend all that money to build the cubicles, the storage, the parlour that goes with those extra 50 cows? Or do I stay at 100 and look at organics? And that I think is where a lot of people are going to look at organics, is in that situation. With all that's coming down the track with nitrates and changes, there's a lot of people, I suppose, probably a bit slow in borrowing for those extra 50 cows, and maybe that's where organics might fit in for a lot of people.
Okay, so Joe, I suppose we better wrap it up with that. Just I suppose if anyone is interested in talking to you, they can just Google Teagasc Organics, I suppose, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I suppose just one thing, and I'm starting there in 2 weeks' time, an introduction to organic dairying course. So if anyone is genuinely interested in finding out more, send me an email to joe.kelleher@teagasc.ie. That's Kelleher. And I'll add you to the list. There's 2 online meetings in December just to go through the basics of what it's about, and we'll be inviting a few people in from the market side of things to explain where the markets are. And then in January I have 2 farm visits organised for people to see what's actually happening, one spring calf and one autumn calving, just to see what's actually happening on the ground. So just drop me an email if anyone is interested in joining that.
Super, Joe. Thanks very much. So just to let people know that next week I'll be talking to Siobhan Kavanagh in relation to Board BA producer reports, just to get a bit more insight into them and what they mean for you. I'll finish up with that. Thanks a million, Joe. Very interesting conversation with you. Wish everybody well for the week, and stay safe in the meantime, and we try and get out of this damn COVID. It's getting more than frustrating at this stage. We'll see you next week, and thanks again, Joe.
Thanks, Stuart.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series. And don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Age interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.